King David was a man of war. He was known far and wide for his military prowess and strategic brilliance. His name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies, and his soldiers revered him as a leader who could turn the tide of any battle. From the plains of Israel to the hills of Judea, his victories were celebrated and his tactics studied by future generations of warriors. He had fought many battles and won many victories. His campaigns were legendary and his conquests numerous. Each victory added to his growing legend, cementing his place in history as one of the greatest military minds of his time. But beyond the battlefield, there was another side to David that many did not see. But David also had a kind heart. Despite his fierce exterior and the bloodshed that marked his reign, he was capable of great compassion and empathy. He understood the pain of loss and the value of mercy. His kindness was not a sign of weakness, but a testament to his strength and wisdom as a ruler. He believed in showing compassion even to his former enemies. David knew that true strength lay not just in defeating one's foes, but in extending a hand of friendship and understanding. He sought to heal the wounds of war and build bridges where there had once been walls. His acts of mercy were remembered long after the battles had ended. When Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, passed away, David wanted to extend an olive branch to his son Hanun. Nahash had once shown David kindness during a difficult time, and David had not forgotten. He saw an opportunity to honor that past kindness and to forge a new alliance with the Ammonites. He sent a group of envoys on a mission of peace. These envoys carried gifts and messages of condolence, hoping to convey David's sincere intentions. They traveled with the hope that their journey would mark the beginning of a new chapter of peace and cooperation between the two nations. They were to comfort Hanun and offer condolences on behalf of David and the Israelites. The envoys were chosen for their wisdom and diplomacy, trusted to represent David's heartfelt sympathies. They approached Hanun with respect and humility, hoping to ease his grief and build a bridge of understanding. David hoped this gesture would foster a new era of peace and cooperation between their two kingdoms. He envisioned a future where their peoples could coexist in harmony, sharing in prosperity and mutual respect. This was not just a political move, but a genuine desire for lasting peace. David truly believed he was doing the right thing. His intentions were pure, driven by a desire to honor the memory of Nahash and to create a better future for both nations. He was hopeful that his gesture would be received in the spirit it was given. He remembered the kindness Nahash had shown him in the past. It was a time when David needed allies, and Nahash had extended a hand of friendship. That act of kindness had left a lasting impression on David, and he was determined to repay it in kind. He wanted to return the favor and start their relationship anew. David saw this as a chance to build on the foundation of past goodwill and to create a legacy of peace. He believed that by showing kindness, he could inspire others to do the same. He had no idea that his good intentions would be so tragically misunderstood. The envoy's arrival was met with suspicion and mistrust. Hanun's advisors convinced him that David's gesture was a ruse, a prelude to invasion. The seeds of doubt were sown, and the mission of peace began to unravel. This act of kindness, intended to bridge the gap between two nations, would inadvertently ignite a firestorm of conflict. What was meant to be a gesture of goodwill turned into a catalyst for war. The misunderstanding led to a series of events that neither David nor Hanun could have foreseen, changing the course of their histories forever. When David's envoys arrived at Hanun's court, they were met with suspicion. The grand entrance of the palace, usually a place of welcome, was now filled with an air of distrust. The envoys, dressed in their finest attire, could feel the weight of the suspicious glances cast upon them by the courtiers and guards alike. The Ammonite commanders whispered in Hanun's ear, poisoning his mind against David. They gathered in shadowy corners, their voices low and filled with malice. "These men are not here to honor your father," they insisted, their words dripping with deceit. "Do you think David is honoring your father by sending these men to you?" they hissed. Their eyes darted around the room, ensuring no one else could hear their treacherous words. "No, he is not here to comfort you. He is here to spy on our defenses." The commander's words were like venom seeping into Hanun's thoughts. "He wants to conquer our land," they declared, their voices rising with urgency. The room was filled with the tension of their plotting, each man contributing to the growing paranoia. They pointed to maps and discussed strategies, their minds set on preparing for an invasion that might never come. The envoys, unaware of the storm brewing around them, continued their mission of peace, oblivious to the danger they were in. Hanun, young and inexperienced, was easily swayed by his advisor's venomous words. He listened intently, his face a mask of uncertainty. The weight of leadership was heavy on his shoulders, and he struggled to discern the truth from the lies. He began to see David's envoys not as messengers of peace, but as cunning spies sent to exploit his kingdom's vulnerabilities. The envoys, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, exchanged worried glances. They could feel the hostility growing, but they were bound by their duty to deliver their message. The seed of doubt, once planted, grew rapidly into a towering tree of distrust. It spread its roots deep into Hanun's mind, overshadowing any thoughts of friendship or alliance. The once hopeful mission was now tainted by suspicion and fear. Hanun, blinded by suspicion, failed to see the genuine gesture of friendship offered by David. The envoys, disheartened and disappointed, left the court with heavy hearts. The opportunity for peace was lost, replaced by a looming threat of conflict. The whispers of suspicion had done their damage, leaving a rift that would be hard to mend. Hanun, convinced of David's treachery, decided to humiliate the envoys. He believed that David's intentions were far from peaceful, suspecting that the envoys were spies sent to gather intelligence on his kingdom. He ordered his soldiers to shave off half their beards, a gesture that was considered deeply humiliating in their culture. The beard was a symbol of dignity and respect, and to have it forcibly altered was a severe affront. Additionally, Hanun commanded that their robes be cut short at the buttocks, exposing them to public ridicule. This act of cutting their garments was not just a physical alteration, but a symbolic stripping of their honor and status. This was a grave insult in their culture, a mark of deep disrespect. The envoys were horrified, their faces reflecting the shock and shame of such treatment. They had come with peaceful intentions, only to be met with such hostility. They pleaded with Hanun, explaining that they came in peace, but their words fell on deaf ears. Hanun was resolute in his belief that they were spies, and no amount of pleading could change his mind. "Go back to your king," Hanun sneered, his voice dripping with contempt, "and tell him what you have received." His mocking tone made it clear that he took pleasure in their humiliation. "This is how we treat spies and enemies, not honored guests," he declared, making his stance unmistakably clear. The envoys were left with no choice but to return, bearing the weight of this grave insult. The envoys, stripped of their dignity and bearing the weight of Hanun's insult, were sent back to David. Their departure was marked by a heavy silence, each step a reminder of the dishonor they had suffered. They carried with them the heavy weight of Hanun's transgression, a burden that would soon plunge the two nations into war. The insult was not just personal but political, setting the stage for a conflict that would have far-reaching consequences. When David's envoys returned to Jerusalem, they were unrecognizable. Their disheveled appearance and the shame etched on their faces spoke volumes. David was furious when he heard what had happened. He was outraged by the mistreatment of his men and the insult to his kingdom. He realized that Hanun had chosen war over peace. David, filled with righteous anger, vowed to avenge this insult. He immediately ordered his army to prepare for battle. He knew that Hanun's actions were a declaration of war, and he would not let this transgression stand unanswered. The Ammonites, aware of David's fury, knew that war was inevitable. They gathered their army and prepared for the coming conflict. They also sought the support of neighboring kingdoms, hiring the powerful Arameans as allies. The Arameans, renowned for their skilled charioteers and formidable warriors, would bolster the Ammonite forces. The stage was set for a bloody confrontation. David, determined to protect his kingdom's honor, would lead his seasoned army against the combined might of the Ammonites and their Aramean allies. David entrusted the command of his army to his skilled general Joab. Joab, a seasoned warrior himself, devised a cunning battle plan to counter the combined might of their enemies. He divided the Israelite army into two groups, placing his brother Abishai in command of one. He planned to attack the Ammonites from the front, while Abishai would ambush the Aramean reinforcements. Joab's strategy was risky but calculated. He knew that defeating the Ammonites alone would be challenging enough. However, facing both the Ammonites and Arameans simultaneously would be nearly impossible. His plan hinged on Abishai's success in delaying the Aramean reinforcements. The battle commenced with a thunderous clash of swords and shields. Joab's forces fought bravely against the Ammonites, but the battle was long and grueling. The Aramean reinforcements, as expected, arrived to support the faltering Ammonite lines. Just when it seemed like the tide might turn against the Israelites, Abishai's forces launched their surprise attack. The Arameans, caught off guard by the sudden assault, found themselves fighting on two fronts. Their carefully planned entrance to the battle dissolved into chaos as they struggled to hold off Abishai's relentless attack. With the Aramean threat neutralized, Joab pressed his advantage against the demoralized Ammonites. The tide of the battle turned decisively in favor of the Israelites. The Ammonites, their ranks broken and their allies routed, were forced to retreat back to their fortified city. The victory was a testament to the bravery of David's army and the tactical brilliance of Joab. The humiliation Hanan had inflicted had been repaid in full, and the honor of Israel restored. However, the war was not over yet. The following spring, the Arameans regrouped and launched another attack against Israel, seeking to avenge their previous defeat. David, however, was ready for them. He personally led his army into battle and decisively crushed the Aramean forces. This time, the victory was absolute. The defeat of the Ammonites and their Aramean allies sent a powerful message to the surrounding kingdoms. David had proven that he was not a ruler to be trifled with. His kingdom was strong, his army mighty, and he would not hesitate to defend his people and his honor. This victory solidified David's position as a dominant force in the region and ushered in an era of peace and prosperity for the kingdom of Israel.